again have taken over this channel. Again, we guide you through the darkness, and as we see, it is very easy to train prey, to allow human meat to become cynical and skeptical in the dark, in the night. Haunted Village. Cassie's parents talked about and obsessed over the local haunted house, or haunted hayride, or haunted maze every year, and this year their daughter was old enough to see their hard work. At least she'd convinced them so. Well, old enough by their standards at least. She was no more than 8 years old, her shy, stolid demeanor belaying her intelligence for one so young. Cassie played as her parents set up their newest Halloween project in an empty acre lot near the old brick historic downtown, a haunted village. Jim and Martha Jones prided themselves on raising the most money of any project the Chamber of Commerce ever put on each year. Even the yearly Christmas festival. And every year, their Halloween celebrations became more and more realistic. "Tonight's the night," Jim noted to his friend as they took a break and drank a cold beer. Sam nodded toward Cassie as he swallowed his sip of the beer, the bitter concoction. Don't you think she's still a bit young for this?" he asked. Jim smiled at his little girl and shrugged. "Maybe," he smiled again, "but she wants to go, and if we deal with her fear properly, we can make her stronger by it." His friend shook his head. "I mean, you're her father, but he pointed with his hand holding the beer. "It's getting awful realistic. The things you got us doing." He swung his pointing hand with the half-filled beer towards the tent that served as the village and growled, "That clown is downright creepy, bud. I mean, super creepy. I don't want my 15-year-old stepdaughter anywhere near it. Or my son. Much less your little girl." "It?" Jim asked. "Sam, you going girly on me? It's just a guy we hired off the internet. He normally does kids' birthday parties and stuff. But he agreed to do a scary clown, and he's getting a little bit of a percentage. So, out of pocket he's free." Sam shook his head. "Well, he's doing a bang-up job." He finished his beer and sat the empty can on the old asphalt, and then crushed it with his boot after standing. "My costume and area looks awful gruesome, so I know you're going all out." Jim stood as well and then downed his beer, catching the crushed one Sam threw to him and depositing both in the bin next to the old bench they had sat upon. "We've sold 400 tickets just for this weekend, and it's not even 2 weeks into the month. You're going to work us to death doing that, Sam said, smiling. Truth be told, he didn't have much else to do. "We'll do that trial run for our families tonight," Jim said. "I'll take Cassie with me and try to make it good for her." Sam eyed his friend. "You really sure about this?" he asked. Jim nodded. "Yeah. If you scare her too much, we can tone it down for the tourists." Sam shook his head. "Don't use your kid as a guinea pig." He was genuinely concerned. Cassie spoke up, standing in front of her Uncle Sam. "Daddy, I still get to go, right?" Her eyes darting between the two men. "I want to see it." You know it's gonna be scary, right? Really bad scary, you know. You might have nightmares and such, Sam told the little girl. She shook her head. I know it's just fake, like wrestling. I'm smarter than that. Jim laughed, kneeling down and hugging his little girl. It took her almost all year to convince us, man. Her being a kidda pig, as you say, was totally her idea. Sam scratched his beard, the one he'd grown out to make his costume look more realistic, and shook his head. Oh, okay, I guess, he said, still unsure. As night fell, Cassie donned her costume. She was going as a fairy princess. Her mother assured her that anything that tried to scare her would be held back by the little tasseled plastic wand with the glittered star glued on its end. Her excitement was palpable, and she couldn't wait to see what her parents had helped the town create. But Cassie's excitement turned sour and then regretful as she passed through one tent to another. Always behind her, always just a glimpse here and there, she saw what she thought looked to be a clown, his costume covered in blood, as if stalking the family. The first room was no more than a torture chamber, items donated for the festival by a local collector, mostly replicas, one of an Iron Maiden, another a set of thumb screws, even a table with a wheel and straps called a rack, and other horrible devices that more than bored the little girl. It was the next room that caused Cassie to regret her decision to come. A gnarled and ancient hag stood in the room that a small tent had made up, stirring a large iron black cauldron with steam pouring out of it. The dim red and green lights flickered as they entered, the fog machine working overtime. But as it flickered, the face that stood before her, stirring that pot of vile liquid, shifted and morphed, like one reality overlaid upon another. One reality, the figure looked as if she were in an expensive mask, and the other a visage of a truly ancient crone, her eyes milky, yet knowing unearthly things. Around the old woman's neck, in both images, was a pendant of a large black bird, bright red stones embedded upon onyx. She cackled as the family moved through, her parents feigning fear and surprise, though Cassie knew very well they knew what was coming. They'd planned it all out, after all. She, for the most part, watched her feet and let her little body get pulled along in their wake, their enthusiasm infecting all around them but her. The next room was a maze, and it not only scared the little girl, but it disgusted her as well. What looked like blood and gore covered the walls of the faux hallways in the maze that was built inside the largest tent in the fake village. The smell of sour and rotted meat filled the air, and the little dark-haired girl had to cover her nose and mouth with her free hand, the other gripping her mommy's tight. Wow, Jim said to his wife, eyeing a bit of cow intestine. Did they use real maggots on those cow entrails? He asked. His wife Martha stopped and focused her sight. Wow, Sam. That man, he went really all out, didn't he, Jim? She asked. Her husband nodded, smiling broadly. You bet, he pointed. Look at the syrup dripping from the walls and ceiling. It looks so much like real blood. I can even almost smell the copper in the air. Cassie was the only one of the three who wasn't smiling, who was trying not to look. In fact, she was desperately trying to bury her face in her mother's side. Oh, what's wrong, honey? Her mother asked, concerned. It smells, Cassie lied, not wanting to look stupid or chickening out. I know, her mother said, patting her head. It's kind of supposed to. It adds to the factor of fear. Cassie let herself be pulled down the hallway that turned left into a blank wall, a mirror hiding all sides, so that the entrance to the final room was indistinguishable from the walls, forcing the trio to wait until they figured out the illusion, allowing the actor, her Uncle Sam, to have time to set the timered lighting. Cassie once again caught the clown out of the corner of her eye, but it was strangely crawling on the floor, almost as if its elbows and knees were hinged backwards, its head floating almost above its body, as if on a tentacle, crawling low to the floor in the flickering light. But finally, they turned down a dark, fog-filled room, and she lost sight of the creature. The room smelled of rotted eggs and spoiled meat. Hooks hung from the ceiling of the room. As the little family approached, light began to come up to a visible level in the corner, where a body, a corpse really, its entrails hanging from its lower belly, hung. A large monster, fur matted with blood, its hairy snout buried in the body, arms wrapped around the corpse, jerking as if trying to get the dead man's heart with its teeth alone. Cassie screamed, her eyes snapping shut, her breathing coming in gasps and wheezes. A panic attack rendering the little 8-year-old girl upon the floor, her vision tunneling into darkness. Cassie, Cassie, her mother knelt, trying to bring the little girl out of it. Oh, sweetheart, her father said, on the other side of her. It's not real. It's just Uncle Sam, I promise. Look, just calm down and look. Slowly, very slowly, as if she had all the time in the world, the little girl came back to herself, slowly dragging her way out of the closing darkness. She sat up to see her Uncle Sam, her father's best friend, the man who'd always been there, solid and steady, ever since the hospital on the day of her birth, his face white and sweaty upon the suit of gray and brown hair, a mask held up under his arm. No, it's me, it's Uncle Sam, he told the girl, who started to relax. He looked at his friend, Sam's face hard. I told you. Her father laughed nervously. Yeah, you did. Maybe, Cassie began. Is it too much? She asked, her voice tentative. Sam smiled. It looks like, Cass. The light dimmed again. Let's see if we can't, her uncle continued. But before he could speak again, His voice cut off as his head disappeared with a ripping sound. The lights once again on a cycle growing bright enough for the little girl to see her uncle's costume-clad body without its head, spurting blood up out of a severed neck, a great shadow behind the body not yet grabbed by gravity, her uncle's hands twitching upon suddenly limp arms. She began to scream, her scream growing to a death wail, near a banshee scream, and as the deep, deep darkness took her awareness back upon the ground, she saw a giant black bird with fangs of a snake, a red stripe around its neck, and wings that looked to be dipped. Their tips looked to be dipped in blood, standing over the falling body of her beloved uncle, his blood dripping from its smacking bill. The world faded with her parents' screams joining her own. We celebrate the season of the night, of the dark. We mock what we fear. Humans disguise themselves to promote that fear, and the very fear that other things feed upon. Things of the night, things in the dark. Now we return you back to this channel until night falls again. Nox Veni, fear the night.